Okay, awesome. So we'll jump into it. Our next speaker is Jason. Jason is a professional software developer in his day to day life with a huge passion for games, both creating and enjoying them, outside of his day to day work, I suppose. His current main project, I'm I never pronounce it correctly. Parad. Can you help me here?
Praedatum. Basically,
Praedatum,
Prince of Power.
sorry, is a top-down extraction shooter which he works on alongside one other developer. While not developing software games or playing games himself, Jason likes to spend his time doing martial arts, taekwondo, and Hapkido. Um,
Keto's good, yeah.
okay, and doing creative writing. So without further ado, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Daniel. Like Daniel said, I'm a software developer by trade. I'm working on a side project called Praedatum, which is what this talk is going to sort of focus on. And as a software developer, I decided to talk about something I have no formal training in, which is storytelling and symbols. The reason that I want to talk about this is because I sort of expected my game not to involve a lot of storytelling, and it ended up involving quite a bit of it, even though it doesn't really have a centralized narrative. And I'm hoping that I can help other people who have similar projects with my experience. So I'm going to start off by just talking a little bit about Predatum. It is an extraction shooter. If you're not familiar with extraction shooters, they're basically like roguelikes, except when you collect your loot, when you get all your guns or your gold or whatever you are searching for in your levels, and you take them out of that level, they're safe forever. It's not like a roguelike where you completely restart when you die. Some good examples are like Escape from Tarkov or Zero Cyber. And as you can see from the screenshot here, it's also a top-down shooter, and it's a top-down shooter sort of in the vein of Hotline Miami or Synthetic, which means that it's very fast-paced, very action-oriented. We're trying to keep the player moving from activity to activity very quickly. Not a lot of downtime, not a lot of exploration, and for that reason, not a lot of narrative or storyline being incorporated directly into the main game. Like I'm saying in the last bullet point there, scrap bots, don't ask questions. Funnily enough, this was not our original plan for Predatum. Originally, it was sort of envisioned actually as an immersive sim. That became a bit too much of a bit of a scope for two people to finish. So we do still have some of the features from that version of Predatum, which I'm showing here. For example, there is a bit of a dialogue system. But it was much more story rich under this original vision. We had branching narrative paths, and we eventually cut that all to get to a scope where we could actually release. And when we did that, I had thought, okay, that's really it for storytelling. We're not going to focus too much on that. I'm not going to need to do a lot of creative writing, but that ended up being false. And before we talk about what I had to do for my project, I have an example of a game that hopefully most of us are familiar with, which is definitely a non-narrative game, but that nonetheless includes storytelling and symbols in it. And that one's Minesweeper. Let me just hide this. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there was a little thing from video on the way. All right, so Minesweeper. Not really what you think of when you think of like a narratively intense game, a game with a lot of writing and thought behind it. But when you think about Minesweeper, it could have just as easily been just a sort of math focused game where you're trying to like find the bad squares. But by incorporating the actual idea of it being a mine, like the mines are going to explode and hurt someone, I think it makes the game a lot more interesting. I think Minesweeper as a title, it grabs your attention when you're looking in your list of Windows games more than Find the Bad Square would. So I think that Minesweeper is a good example of a game where it's a non-narrative game, but there is a little bit of storytelling going on in there, and there is a little bit of lore, if you want to call it that way, to Minesweeper that makes it more interesting than if it didn't have it. I don't believe every game needs this. For example, Tetris, super successful. I don't think there is much of a theme to Tetris. They are just blocks, but it can help games where you wouldn't necessarily expect it, like in Minesweeper. Okay, so let's start talking about actually Predatum here, and this is one of our enemies called the Wage Cage. Now, the wage cage actually started out as sort of just like a regular organic zombie. And at this point, we didn't really have any storytelling or ideas for the game. We had just switched over to the extraction shooter from the immersive sim and dropped all of that lore. So at this point in time, all we were thinking about was making an art style sort of similar to Doom Crossing, which was Doom mixed with Animal Crossing, which was a bit of a meme back in 2022 where you had Doom like enemies, but they were done in a cute way. And what I rapidly discovered is that it is much easier to make robotic enemies than it is to make organic enemies. Originally, we had like organic enemies, we had some sort of monster demon enemies, and we had robot enemies. And since it was easier to make the robot enemies, we eventually cut all of the demonic and humanoid organic enemies. And this was the point where I started thinking maybe I'm going to have to bring some of the storytelling and symbols back in to explain why you're just fighting robots. And we decided that the game was going to be about basically fighting an evil corporation that was run by robots. But we already did have this zombie enemy basically completely programmed, completely figured out, and we needed a reason for this organization to have a zombie like enemy, even though they were. A corporation run mostly by robots. And we eventually came up with the wage cage. And the idea of the wage cage is that the wage cage is an employee that's been stuffed into this robot to control the robot. And the reason why they need to go into the robot is because the warehouse can be a dangerous area where you're moving around boxes. You need some extra strength to work in industrial areas. So they have this robotic shell to keep the human body safe and give it a little bit more strength while they're working. And this ended up having two big benefits by coming up with this sort of storyline background to this enemy that never actually appears in the game, but nonetheless was in our minds as we were designing him. And the first benefit is that he clearly looks kind of evil, right? He looks like a bad guy, and that makes the player know, okay, this is something that I want to shoot, and it also gives the player a little bit more satisfaction when the enemy is actually defeated by making him look like a really evil guy again from having that skull in the center. He's metallic and robotic as compared to the more human influences. That's one of the major themes that we did want to focus on was technology versus humanity. All of the allied characters are very human, they're very organic, and the enemies are all robots like this. And it also had the benefit of sort of showing what the enemy was actually like in the game. He's tough, he's slow, and he hits hard. So with this design of him being in this suit that gives him more strength from moving around, but is very robotic, it simultaneously shows okay he can take a lot of punishment. He's a lot bigger than a lot of the other characters in the game, and you don't want to get hit by him because he can hit hard. Moving sort of more into the symbols portion of the talk, some of the influences for the wage cage were, for example, the Iron Maiden. And if you're not familiar with the Iron Maiden was a torture device back in uh, the late Middle Ages, and by incorporating the Iron Maiden into the wage cage's design. He's upright. He's got little handles that you can open the cage just like it is an Iron Maiden. It sort of implied again more the evilness of the character, that there's a lot of pain that goes into the character, but also the Iron Maiden looks very sturdy. It's made of metal. It seems like it can take a lot of punishment. So again, that factors in. And then another factor in the design was these warehouse drones from an undescribed company. And again, that fits in with the industrial theme, the corporate theme, but also something interesting about these drones was the coloring. Specifically, the orange. You see orange a lot in industrial settings, but orange can also mean danger. It can indicate to people a lot that this is a dangerous area, or back in the past that this is a dangerous creature. A lot of poisonous creatures are orange, so including the orange color in the enemy was also something that we wanted to do. Moving on to some of our other enemies here. Again, speaking more about symbols here than storytelling, these ones have a lot less of a backstory than the wage cage does. They do still have that orange theming, Again, making sure to show that all of the enemies are on the same side and that same side is dangerous. But they're also insect themed. So obviously, this bottom right one here, he has a stinger coming out the front, and he also has wings. And then for the other guy here, not displayed here, but he's sort of thought of as a beehive. A bunch of smaller robots come out of him when he's close enough to attack you. And he also has these little devil horns here. And by being insect themed, and these two drones also fly, we're sort of emphasizing that these enemies are small, fast, and annoying. So when we think about insects, especially mosquitoes out here in Winnipeg, we think of things that are small and fast and agile, but also usually pretty annoying. And that's exactly how these enemies behave in the game. They don't have a lot of health. They're pretty weak, again, kind of like insects. And they're difficult to hit and they move very fast. So similarly to how we designed the enemies, we also wanted to factor storytelling and symbols to how we designed your friends. So we gave basically a medieval theme to all of the characters that are on your team, and we also made sure most of them were in military uniforms. And one aspect of especially the medieval theme was that it helped emphasize this idea of like humanity fighting back against technology that came out of the storytelling of the game being about an evil corporation. And both the military uniforms and the medieval theme sort of gave the outfits for the characters a bit more of a natural coloration. You see a lot of greens and browns, as well as blue is a critical color to show up for people who are your friends in the game. And these natural colors, these browns and greens, don't really show up that much in the corporate areas or the corporate enemies. Usually they use more artificial colors, concrete colors, as we said before, orange, uh, black and yellow hazard paint appears, but these green colors don't appear as much. And since they're wearing military uniforms, which are designed usually to camouflage and blend in with greenery, and the fact that they have more naturally colored outfits even outside of the military uniforms. That contrasts a lot with the more artificial corporate designs of the enemies, and makes it really clear. It makes two things very clear. For one, it makes it clear when you're in an area that's controlled by your friends, that's safe. So most of those areas they have wood paneling, which is again that brown natural color. They have grass and dirt, the greens and the browns again, and it makes it very clear when you're safe and when you don't need to worry about being attacked by robots, and also when you actually go into these hostile areas, the corporate areas. The fact that your character is always wearing these more natural colors that don't really appear on anything else in those levels, the browns and the greens, it makes it really clear which character is your character in the middle of combat, and it lets you continue to track your character. So moving on from some of the characters and moving away from symbols and more back into the storytelling elements, I want to talk a little bit about the level design and how this factored into level design for me. So when I started developing levels for Predatum, a lot of what I focused on was trying to hit a quota, essentially trying to say, okay, this room of this level requires 5 enemies, 5 pieces of chest high cover, 5 pieces of full cover, a certain amount of loot, a certain amount of ranged and melee enemies, and it needs to be a certain size. And I was trying to hit all of these very, very specific gameplay motivated quotas. And whenever I tried to design a level like that, it just never worked out. It was never fun. It never felt inspired. All of the rooms sort of felt samey because I was just trying to hit these arbitrary numbers that I had set for myself that I thought would be good from a gameplay perspective. And in a certain sense, it is important to have those. I obviously do look at how many loot crates there are in a level, how many enemies there are in a level, and try to balance that. But I did find that I ended up creating much, much more interesting levels when I started to try to focus on the storytelling. So on the right here, we have a screenshot of an example here. And we've got a bunch of crates and garbage and chairs and furniture all stacked up in front of this door here. And this sort of does two things here. For one, having this all stacked up in front of the door gives a justification as to why we can't navigate in that direction and why we can't go that way, and sort of indicates to the player that they can't go that way, that they shouldn't try to go that direction, that they should be going upwards or north or whatever you want to call it through this green door. So that's one thing that this accomplishes. But also, the fact that all of this stuff is stacked up in front of the store indicates that someone was really trying to defend this area. Someone didn't want you to get in there, or maybe even a group of people with how much stuff is stacked up there. And that also gave a justification to have turrets set up on either side of this little fortification here, um, which again just makes it a more natural enemy placement. And if you can make a more natural, a more interesting enemy placement, I think that does make things more fun for the player as well. So that's this example here. And in general, I do find that an interesting story makes for interesting gameplay. If you can come up with an interesting idea for a room, that's going to make for more interesting gameplay than just trying to hit uh, a bunch of arbitrary balance quotas. For example, if you wanted to have a lot of food loot in one room, you could say, okay, I'm going to make that a restaurant. That would be, storyline wise, why there would be food in that room. And then you can think, for example, especially in a game like mine, Praedatum, where there's a lot of combat. If you have a lot of combat in your game, well, tables are going to get knocked over, chairs are going to get knocked over, and you can sort of imagine what happened. Did someone flip up the table because they were trying to escape? Did it get knocked over by an explosion? And when you think about what happened and you position all of the props in the room that way, uh, that hits all of the things that you need in terms of the chest high covers that you need, the obstacles that you need to prevent movement. Thinking of that story helps you hit those things naturally, and it also makes things more visually interesting and usually more fun for the player. Of course, it's always good to go back through and look at the balancing for a level, but I find that thinking about the story first and the gameplay balancing second is what typically worked for me with making nice rooms. And I have one last example here of how the storytelling helped me develop nice level design. Here we have an area where essentially a bunch of police officers or security officers from the human forces tried to fight back against the robots that were coming out of this corporation. And as you can see from the various body bags stacked around, they unfortunately failed. And having this idea in my mind, even though there's no way to figure out that that's what happened from any of the explicit narrative in the game, it helped me achieve a few things for this. For one, it was a good excuse to have a lot of military or weapon loot centered in one area. So if a player really needs weapons or ammo, they know, oh, I can go to this area that I've seen before that has all of this military stuff around it. Another thing that it allowed me to do is because I had this idea in my mind of these security forces actually intentionally setting up, these vehicles over here, these concrete barriers, setting them up as cover. I was able to actually use them as cover for the player, and it was just a more natural way to come up with a good arena for you to fight the bots in. And as a place where the security forces were fighting back against the bots, it also gave a good justification to have a lot of robots here in this area because, of course, they were trying to take down these security forces. It would make sense that there's a lot of robots here, and because the military loot is extra valuable, that means that they can actually protect that loot from the player. And then the final bit that this helped with is it just helped having a lot of interesting props. So, for example, down here in the bottom right, we have a lot of bullet casings, which presumably came from the fight that happened. They were firing their weapons a lot, and a lot of bullet casings were ejected. And this also leads the player to this ammo crate where they can find ammo. Also, the body bags are a pretty interesting, visually interesting element. You don't usually see a lot of reds around in the normal like corporate style of levels we have. So the red on the body bags really does stand out. And of course, these police vehicles with their lights and their guns are also an interesting prop that you don't see in a lot of places, and also help this area to stand out. Uh, so that is how I use storytelling to sort of design this particular area in a level, and that was basically the process that I used to develop a lot of my different areas when working on Praedatum. So that is it for my talk. That is how I was able to use storytelling and symbols in Predatum. I do have a lot more examples. So of course, if you want to ask me about them, chat about game design, anything, feel free to get in contact with me. JJ1138 on Discord. You can see me, of course, if you're here watching right now. You can see my Discord profile. Feel free to reach out anytime. And thank you for listening. And thank you, Daniel, for hosting.